Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another BrainMap. As always, this seminar series is co-sponsored by the P41 Fund Center for Mesoscale Mapping, housed here at Martinos Center. And today we have the privilege of having Dr. Marta Bianciardi. Is Associate Professor here at Radiology, Harvard Medical School, and MGH. She is also the director of the BrainStem Imaging Laboratory at Martinos Center, and as a consultant for the Harvard Catalyst case-specific end-page consultation service, she provides feedback to NIH K Award applicants on their specific end page. And today she's going to tell us more about this story. So let's welcome Marta.
Thank you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to present this educational topic at the BrainMap series. I guess, if we don't write good grants and don't get funded, we don't do our research. So this is also relevant for the research. So I will talk specifically about the specific aims page. I hope you can hear me well. Okay. So which we need to think about like a page where we just don't describe what we're going to do, but we kind of make a strong argument that why this research is needed and why we are the best person to do so, and why, and we also have a clear idea of how we're going to test the hypothesis, and we have a clear vision of how this research can have an impact in the future. So when we think about writing, there are some people who are natural born writers, but probably nobody is a natural born grant writer. And so it's a skill that we need to learn, we can improve. And this is also what happened to me when I joined the MGH Martinos Center 14 years ago. I was not a grant writer. And so what I used to do, I used to go to Bruce Rosen and with my specific aims page, and discuss it with him, and I would get amazing feedback. Maybe all of you know that he is a master on grant writing. He not only understands the format, but also the science underneath it. And so I don't want just to add the work to him. You probably already know about this. But then also I attended a Harvard Catalyst course to write an NIH-R1 for NIHK grant awardees. So it's called the Grant Review and Support Program. This is the link, it's GRASP. And thanks to Bruce Rosen feedback and to the GRASP support, I got first percentile on my first R1, which was very remarkable considering how much I struggled in grant writing. And then in the last 3 years, I've been a consultant for the Harvard Catalyst Writing and Communication Center for the program Specific Aims Page Consultation Service for applicants of NIHK grants. And basically, I do a consultation once a month, and I provide feedback to investigators who are writing their K grant, and specifically on the Specific Aims page. And that's a QR code with a link. So we will follow the recommendation developed by the Harvard Catalyst, and they gave me permission to share what I learned from them and to show the rubric and all the materials from their webpage. So I will say we recommend, we suggest. If you're happy, praise Harvard Catalyst. If not, complain with me. We'll start talking about demystifying the grant reviewing process. And then I will follow the Specific Aims page rubric developed by Harvard Catalyst Writing and Communication Center, tailored for NIHK award applications. And I will specifically talk about formatting strategies, such as the use of sections and keywords. And I'll give some tips on style. And then I will provide also specific writing tips for NIHR award applications. Yeah, this is the page that is linked to that QR code. You can see, if interested, you can apply for a consultation. Now they're accepting for consultation starting in December. So yeah, when we, for example, we give a talk, we need to tailor our speech to the audience. And in the same way, when we write a grant, we need to tailor the writing for our audience, for our readers. And here we have two readers. One are the reviewers, and the other are the study section members. And usually we get 2 to 4 reviewers. Usually it's 3. And when we think of them, maybe we think this is their job, but this is they don't make out a living out of a grant reviewing. This is an extra job on top of their responsibilities, and they don't do it for money, and they do it in their spare time. Sometimes they do it, in the weekends or at nights, 10 p.m. from their beds. Imagine, yeah, a tired reviewer doing this job. They get maybe 8 grants in 6 weeks to review, and they do it when they have time. Technically, they should read all the grant components, and this is what they do. Specific aims, research strategies, all the administrative parts. And last weekend I met with a friend who's doing a grant. She's a grant reviewer, and she's doing these 8 grant. She's reviewing 8 grants, and when I told her I would give this seminar, she told me, "Oh, tell them be nice with the reviewers." Because it's a very tiring job, and she was telling me, about her hazy evening eyesight, and how much you need, and how much technical these grants are. And instead, if a reviewer can grasp the story, it's much easier for them to read through the grant and to understand it and to score. And so also what we might think is that they are 100% experts on our topic. But this might not be the case. I think you are the only 100% expert on your grant, maybe your mentors or close collaborators or a few other people in the world. So usually, a reviewer, let's say reviewer 1 is the topic is cancer genetic. Reviewer 1 maybe knows both about cancer and genetics. But reviewer 2 maybe just knows about cancer. And reviewer 3 maybe is a genetist, but he studies other diseases. So we might, so we need to think about this in terms of our readers, in terms of our audience. And the other people that read the specific aims page, they might not read the whole grant, they don't have time. They are the study section members. So these are like 15 to 30 people who listen to the reviewer's presentation and comments. And usually they might be even less expert on your topic than the reviewers. In a study section, they have all these people with complementary expertise. It's a broad and diverse group. These are scientists, researchers, but they might not be experts on what you're writing. And they have some minutes before the discussion of your grant to the specific aims page. So what do they do? They just go have a look, and they scan through the page and look for some keywords. And in a few minutes, they can try to understand your goals. And but they don't have time to go deep in details or in technicalities. They're very important because together with the reviewers, they give a score. So this is to tell you that the specific aims page is the most read section of the grant. And we need to be mindful of the reviewers' time. And also we need to be mindful of their expertise of both the reviewer and the study section members. So we might have experts in our topic, but also lay persons. And so when we write a grant, we need to use plain language. Imagine explaining your research to a scientist in a field other than yours or to a friend. And then write your specific aims page using simple words and sentences. Because if it's too technical, it's going to be difficult to read. And you have a lot of space in the research strategy to give all these details and technicalities and to show that you know what you're talking about. So it's interesting that they match me in these 3 years that I've been consulting for Harvard Catalyst. I haven't received a single grant on brain imaging, which is my topic. And so they match me with investigators that write grants on completely different topics, and then I tell them, "Oh, I'm not sure I got the aim from the title, and can you tell me more about it?" And they start telling me, in a very informal way, what they're working on, and then I say, "Okay, please take a note, write this. This is the better title. It's you should convey a story, not a very technical statement of what you're going to do." And I don't know if you have ever done it. Ask a scientist in a field other than yours, or ask a friend to read your specific aims page. Because usually we ask just the mentors or close collaborators to do it. but they have like a similar eye. They've been working on the same topic. They don't have a fresh eye on your specific, on this topic. So this is to tell you that readability is key, and I will go through formatting strategies. We suggest using some sections and some keywords. So starting with sections or paragraphs, in the same way when we write a paper, we have, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And a reader doesn't need to read the whole paper. If they're just interested in the results, they know where to go and read the results and look at the figures. In the same way, in the specific aims page, we recommend using sections. And so here I'm giving you an example of two formats. In format A, we have 3 sections, and in format B, we have 4. And and one of these is the one that we mostly recommend. I don't know if you have any guess on which one we recommend. B. B. Yes, you're correct. So it's introduction, body, specific aims, and impact. Introduction is a triangle. I'll talk more about the funnel shape of the introduction. And you're completely right. We need 4. It's the impact, but we need to add the impact. I can tell you that often we receive specific aims that follow the format A. So there is no impact section. And the impact section is important. It's like giving to the reviewers a cup of coffee. They, after reading all this, they might be tired. After reading the introduction, body, specific aims, they might ask, okay, but what is this useful for? I mean, what's the outcome? And then you go, you say, oh, this is where I'm going to develop this tool, or I'm going to validate this method and answer this important question for these reasons. And so it's kind of waking them up and giving them a vision of the usefulness of this research. And it's kind of a summary as well. Also, we recommend giving spaces. Spaces, it's first of all, the reviewer can distinguish the sections. So if they're just interested in the aims, they just go there, or in the impact. And also you give them, they can breathe, when they read this page, they read the page, okay, it's a breath in, and then they keep reading and they keep going, and we help them through this process. I will follow now the rubric that was developed by Harvard Catalyst. It's also in the same in this webpage, the QR code. And this is the rubric. It's also that we use also to support people who do the consultation with Harvard Catalyst. And we'll start talking about the introduction. So in the introduction, we recommend having a first sentence that defines the problem. So we start from a broad sentence. We define the general problem. It needs to be kind of a catchy sentence. We need to catch the reviewer's interest and state why the proposal is important, and add facts, what we know and what we don't know about the research, which are the gaps. And then the most important piece is the closing sentence of this paragraph, which states the critical unmet need. So we should state the unmet need and underline it. And this paragraph uses a funnel shape conceptually, because we go from a broad general statement to this critical unmet need, very specific, very focused. So we go from the general to the specific. We introduce the problem, the topic. We say what's known and what's unknown, and we end it with the critical unmet need. And this is an example. It's a fictional example. So it should be about 10 lines or less. So the invented syndrome is a fatal form of congenital disease characterized by the underdevelopment of this tissue. The classical model has become insufficient to explain clinically heterogeneous presentation of IS, suggesting multiple pathogenic etiologies that have yet to be resolved. Moreover, emerging evidence indicates that distinct intrinsic defects underlie the mechanism driving IS pathogenesis in a patient-specific manner. Yet, it is still unknown how the extensive genetic heterogeneity of IS converges on common intrinsic defects, how these defects alter the sequential cellular processes contributing to diseases, and how these processes are governed by complex molecular programs in each unique genetic setting. Thus, there is a critical unmet need to develop a unifying picture of the genetic, cellular, and molecular underpinnings of IS in its heterogeneous and patient-specific manifestations. So we start from a very general sentence, and then we say, moreover, we keep telling what we know about the field, but then we say, oh, yet we still don't know about this. And so there is a critical unmet need to solve this problem, to answer this question. And then the body. So if in the introduction we ended with the critical unmet need, we can start the body with seeing the overall objective of this proposal, which is exactly to solve the need. So really, this is our argument. There is a need, we're going to solve it. It's useful. And then we need to describe why we are the most qualified to do this work. And we can do it in two ways. We can reference to preliminary data that we have, or we can also say based, this project builds upon our expertise on this topic. And then we can state the long-term goal. The long-term goal is something we want to achieve that goes beyond the proposal. So the overall objective, the first point, it's something we want to achieve within the K or the R grant, so within the next 3 to 5 years. And the long-term goal, instead, it's something that we would like to achieve in the next 10 to 20 years. Maybe we want to translate this into clinical practice. And then the other important piece is the central hypothesis. So the central hypothesis, so for a K award, we recommend having just one central hypothesis rather than individual hypothesis. It's one clear overarching idea testable by the aims. It should be explicitly written out. Our central hypothesis is, and we recommend underlining it so it's easy to find in the page. And we recommend not having individual hypotheses for a K because it might be too ambitious. Basically, for a K, you are like a postdoc who gave them superpowers and you became a junior faculty, but you don't have a lab pushing a lot, moving forward the research. You're on your own. Maybe you have a technologist or you have a research assistant or part-time. And so if it's 3 independent hypotheses, it might be too overwhelming, might be too ambitious, and they might not believe you're gonna do this. Instead, for an R, it's very typical. For an R grant, it's very typical to have individual hypotheses, but you also can choose to have just a central hypothesis. So just to summarize, yeah, we recommend having 4 pieces. The overall objective of this proposal, long-term goal, so in 10 to 20 years, preliminary data or mention about your expertise, and the central hypothesis. So this is an example. It's about 15 lines or less. The overall objective of this K proposal is to improve our understanding of the invented syndrome pathogenesis in a patient-specific manner. Our long-term goal is to improve decision-making regarding clinical management of IS and to extend the lives of patients with IS. Our preliminary data demonstrate that, or you could say our expertise in congenital diseases developed in the last 5 years and our pilot investigation of IS genetic defects strongly support the feasibility of the proposed project. And then our central hypothesis is that diagnosis and therapeutic targeting of 2 IS etiologies can be improved by characterizing this and that. Yeah, the order doesn't matter. Yeah, for example, you could have the central hypothesis first and then say this is based on the preliminary data. So have the preliminary data after. And the long-term goal also, you can put it at the end. Personally, I like to have the overall objective at the beginning because it's very close to the critical unmet need, but also you can move it afterwards if you prefer. All right, then we reach the specific aims part. Usually we have 2 to 3 specific aims. For a K, K awards are 3 to 5 years. So you could have 2 aims or 3 aims. And sometimes you put 3, but then the reviewer says, oh, remove the last one. It's too much. You're not going to be able to do this. So for a K, it's typical to have 2 or 3. For an R grant, it's more common to have 3 aims. But I've heard also of having 2 aims. But then in that case, they might question you, why do you need 5 years and all these resources for 2 aims? I mean, it depends, of course, on the body of work. But it's much more common to have 3 than 2. We don't recommend having sub-aims because sub-aims can be very technical. And also it can give this impression of being too ambitious. So what do you write in each aim? Usually it's 3 sentences. So you write for aim 1 title in bold, and then you have a method sentence. So you describe the approach, just 1 sentence. You put the methods, but you don't need to specify a lot of parameters. Maybe just the sample size or just the technique that you're gonna use. And then the 3rd sentence is the part of the central hypothesis that you're testing through the aim. Typically, it does not have an individual hypothesis, and yes, it does not rely on the success of previous aims. This is something still I don't fully understand, why they cannot depend, because sometimes we want to develop and then validate and apply, so it's kind of a flow, and there is dependency. I first develop and then I validate the technique and then I want to apply. But reviewers and the NIH doesn't like this dependency because if you're not able to complete aim 1, then you're not gonna do aim 2. So it introduces a weakness, and it's much stronger if you have completely independent aims. And we also recommend using decisive language, and I'll talk more about this in a few minutes. So here for the specific aims, so 3 sentences, a title in bold, method sentence, and which part of the central hypothesis is being tested, and aims independent from each other, if possible, and it would be better not to include sub-aims. And this is to give you an example. Aim 1, characterize cell autonomous phenotypes and cellular mechanistic framework in the invented syndrome and investigate the molecular mechanism utilized in the invented syndrome to govern contractility. So this is the title. To do this, we will use this method on a cohort of n subjects. Yeah, and please specify if it's humans or rats. I remember reading once a specific aims page, and then when we were talking with during the consultation, I realized that it was a rat study, but from the specific page, it was not clear to me. And because for you it's obvious, but for the reader it might not be obvious. And then the 3rd sentence is with hypothesize, or we will test the hypothesis that these proteins are intrinsic regulators of contractility by promoting this or other process. And in 2 and 3, it's a similar structure. Yeah, so this is what we discourage you from having, especially for a K, having these sub-aims. Yeah, what to do if there is dependency, because this is kind of common. You can try to rephrase the aims. For example, let's say you had in aim 1, just to characterize the cellular framework. And then we had another aim, which was characterizing the molecular framework. But then to do the molecular framework, you need to have done aim 1. So then it's better to put them together in aim 1. You do them together. And then in aim 2, you do something else that you wanted to test, maybe in aim 1, but it's not linked to this characterization. So you can rephrase them. Or if you have a dependency, you can try to show that the independent aim, let's see the aim 1, is really substantiated by strong preliminary data. So you have done already so much work that they say, okay, they're gonna finish this because it's almost done. Maybe they have done half of it. And so in 2 and 3, they're gonna work for sure. And then the impact. So in the impact, we recommend having at least 3 pieces. So 1 sentence on how the applicant research will advance the field. And then if it's a K, you are applying for a specific NIH institute. So it would be good if you can add a sentence on how your work fits the mission of the NIH institute you're applying to. And the 3rd sentence is how this grant will prepare you for NR01. So you can say it will help me acquire preliminary data, or it will help me get specific training on something that you need. And it's written as though success is inevitable. Yeah, and I will talk about decisive language soon. So this is the impact, scientific impact outcome, how it fits the NIH Institute mission, and how it will help you become an independent investigator. And this is for a K award. Example. Outcome of this proposal is to provide insight into IS pathogenesis in a patient-specific manner, which will advance decision-making regarding clinical management and extend the lives of patients with IS. This work aligns with the mission of the NIH Institute because, and this award will prepare me for an R1 focused on this topic by allowing me to collect preliminary data or learn more about, get some trainings. So this was for a K award. I just want to briefly mention differences for an R award. There are some, but there are not that many. So as I mentioned, in an R award, you can also have, it's recommended also to have individual hypotheses, or you could have a central hypothesis. And yeah, so here in each hypothesis, you're going to describe which hypothesis in each aim you are going to test. And then, of course, you don't have an NIH-specific NIH institute. It's going to be assigned later, and you're already an independent investigator. And as I mentioned, you can have 3 aims. 3 aims are, it's common to have 3 aims for an R grant. So now I will switch to keywords. I already mentioned a lot of these keywords. So you need to think about this reviewer or study section member browsing through the document, looking for keywords. Imagine if the reviewer needs to go back to the specific aims and just scan through this document, or the study section member has just a few minutes. And so the keywords need to be underlined. So their job is going to be much easier to find the keywords. So I mentioned one keyword in the introduction. Yeah, I don't know if anyone remembers which one is an important keyword, how we should end the introduction. Unmet need, yes. So we have a critical unmet need. What about the body? Any keywords that you remember? Central hypothesis, great. Overall objective, long-term goal, preliminary data. And the specific aims, just the fact that you have aim 1 and 2 and 3 with the title in bold, that's kind of a keyword. And then impact, we have outcome. So this is an example. I put together all the examples we've been reading together. And yeah, so this is the introduction, how just scanning, just reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, just reading these 6 sentences, they can understand a lot about the grant and the aims. So if I ask you, can you find the central hypothesis? I don't know if you can read, but it's not difficult to find it if you just follow the underline. It's here. They just need, the central hypothesis is this. Let me see what they're doing. And now if I ask you, can you find the central hypothesis here? So this is the other format that sometimes we get. So there is no break between the sections, and there is no formatting, the underlining, there is no keywords. So it's going to take them longer to find what they want. Here it is. Okay, tips on style. Yeah, decisive language. So avoid words that communicate indecisiveness. Yeah, you're selling your research. Imagine you're at a market. You cannot say, oh, this might be good. This will be good. This success is inevitable. It's very different from paper writing. At the beginning, yeah, I was just used to write papers. And in papers, when you do the conclusion, you say, oh, this might be useful for future studies. You use might. If you say will, the reviewer is going to complain. They're going to be really upset and saying, oh, you haven't, you need to prove that. You cannot say will. But here, this is grant writing. And we just need to be confident. And this is not a publication. It's just our prediction that this is going to work. We believe, we are the first one to believe that this is going to work. And we want to convey this message to the reviewers. So the use of decisive language, for example, use the words like define, determine, Yeah, the NIH doesn't like exploratory science. They mainly like hypothesis-based science, and this word explore, discover. You can have an exploratory aim, but it needs really to be spelled out. This is an exploratory aim after having other two aims that are really strong and solid. But try avoid using exploring, discover. So these results will define. And here, these results might lead to a better understanding. And this is not so decisive. The cell line we have developed and characterized will allow us to test rather than determine if we can develop a cell line. Of course, we use if when we do hypothesis testing, but that's different. It's a hypothesis that we are testing and we're going to do it. This grant proposal will build upon our pilot data and demonstrate that. Yeah, you can, there is a checklist, it's called plain language checklist for grants in the same web page, and this is the link. So the plain language is the way you write so that a friend can understand your specific aim page. Include only need to know information and just keep the nice to know details. Especially in the specific aims page, you don't have a lot of space. It needs really to be very tight and focused. Use short and simple sentences. If you start adding your explanation in parentheses, commas, semicolons, lengthy or complex sentences, they require more attention from the reviewers. Yes, so this is a proposal. It's a work of persuasion and not a collection of disparate facts. It's not a merely description of the work. You're making an argument, and this argument needs to be tight, focused, and compelling. Additional tips, so the format is important. The font should be Arial 11 or at least 0.5-inch margins, but use all the space that you need, because this is an important page. As I mentioned before, the heading, spacing, bolding, using italics and the use of keywords, underline them. It should be only one page, letter, paper size. Sometimes I get, a specific aims page and then the references. Citations should not be in the specific aims page. It should stand on its own. And then spell out the acronyms the first time they're used, and don't use more than 2 or 3 in general. If you can use no acronym, it's even better. Otherwise, then it becomes too technical, and then they need to come back and then check what the acronym means, and it's less readable. Yes, I would like to thank the Harvard Catalyst Writing Center staff and programs and all those that helped me improve my grant writing skills. This is a link for the specific aims page consultation service and also for the GRASP program. And I would like to thank my funding sources and thank you for your attention.